Hi guys, my name's Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto. In this episode, I'm going to talk about EOS and how I feel about it in relation to Ethereum. Am I still as bullish as I was about EOS, or do I feel that that has shifted? Also, I'm going to talk about EOS's governance compared to Ethereum's failure to scale, and which one I consider to be the biggest hurdle. We're going to talk about the upcoming bull run and just how I see things playing out, and I'm also going to share with you my up-to-date portfolio. I Thank you very much for joining me. I thought it was about time to give an up-to-date coverage of my portfolio, and I had an interesting question from a user. His name was EOS Test Dummy on Twitter, and he says, "Been following you for a while. I remember when you decided to move from a heavy Ethereum position to a heavy EOS position. Is the governance issue on par with the scaling issue?" So he's referring to the governance issue on EOS, I'm pretty sure, and referring to the scaling issue on Ethereum. And so, yes, earlier this year I did record a video, and this video was called "The Real State of Ethereum 2.0. Why I sold 40% of my Ethereum for EOS." I recorded that in February 2019. And I shared my portfolio at the time as well. We'll put that right here. And in this video, I basically talked about the realistic outcome for Ethereum and how it looked like it was going to take several years at the minimum to have a viable, fully working, scalable, operable product on the Ethereum 2.0 blockchain. And I still fully agree with my sentiment on that. If you haven't watched that video, please do watch it. It does seem to be taking as long as I originally thought. So no change there. Now we're going to get to my current portfolio in a moment here, but just to leave you in a little bit of suspense, we're going to first talk about this question that this user had. So, is governance issue on par with scaling issue? Is EOS governance on par with Ethereum scaling? And they are both very serious issues. I broke it into pros and cons. I am still bullish on EOS. As I recently shared, it is still more decentralized than Bitcoin. And I'll put that image right here. Basically what you're looking at in this image is the number of block producers in various geographic locations on Earth. And then on the bottom, we're looking at the Bitcoin hash rate geographic distribution, where these mining pools are located. And just to nip one argument right in the bud, people argue, well, you could change your mining pool where it's pointing instantly, and therefore it's not really geographically centralized. I don't know that that's true. First of all, it doesn't take long for a malicious pool to take some actions. Yes, you can definitely change where your mining pool is pointed. However, you can also do the same thing with EOS. You can instantly change your votes about which block producers you're voting into the top 21. So I think they're pretty equal as far as ability to move votes and move mining power and hash rate away from corrupt BPs or miners. So I think that's kind of a equal platform there. And so what you do see is that Bitcoin actually does have a greater predominance of hash rate, which is network security located in China. And it's grossly concentrated there. So I'm just going to leave that fact as it is. You know, I've had a lot of attention on the fact that I feel EOS is centralized in China, and it is definitely becoming more and more so, but it's not on the level that Bitcoin is. So if anyone's trying to point out the fact that EOS is centralized in China, I beg them to take an honest look at Bitcoin, because it is actually more so centralized in China as far as specifically security of the network goes, as far as making the blocks, the hash rate goes. There are definitely other factors. There's, of course, the development decentralization. You know, how many implementations of the software are being made? How many developers are there? Where are they all located? There's a ton of different ways you can look at decentralization. But as far as security of the network and block production, I think that actually right now it looks like Bitcoin is more centralized. So that was an interesting find for me. And so I'll continue on EOS's pros. It's also a superior and more powerful smart contract platform than Ethereum. It's also faster and a joy to use. So yes, if you've never used EOS, it really is a joy to use. It's like using a website without a blockchain. I mean, it's basically instantaneous. And that's really how blockchains should be, and that's how they're going to be more and more. There's no reason to have to wait really any period of time when you're interacting with a modern blockchain. So waiting 10 minutes for a block, that's very archaic. but Bitcoin has that first mover advantage. That's really the only reason it's in place number one. If you were to release any of these other blockchains that has, a couple seconds confirmation time, and you released it back in 2009, then I can guarantee you Bitcoin would not be number one, because just the free market competition would choose the superior blockchain. So really what's holding Bitcoin in place right now is its incumbency, its number one position, and its first mover, name brand, recognition, and adoption. But that is worth something, and that's what's happening right now. Now we're going to get into the cons of what I see here about EOS. I'm not as bullish about EOS as I was a year ago, based on failures in governance. For example, good BPs being pushed out by exchanges, no changes in the voting system, and not getting inflation removed, among other things. So those are things I'm not happy with on EOS. And I still hold some other cryptos, such as Ethereum, and I'm very glad I do, because I think that they're both not perfect systems. And to just explicitly answer the question of, is the governance issue on par with the scaling issue, the EOS governance is not as bad as Ethereum's failure to scale. You can't do anything useful with a blockchain at max capacity. Ethereum may resolve that. The question is, when? Ethereum 2 is too slow to arrive. My money is still more so on EOS. So now with all that being said, let's show the pie chart of my current holdings. This is where I'm at now, guys. Yes, it may be a shocker. It has changed quite a lot. As you can see here, I'll do a comparison. I went from 55% EOS to 30% EOS. Now I want to make note of two things here. One, this is not financial advice. This is just how I'm holding things, my opinion, my views. Education only, right? Secondly, a lot of the changes in my portfolio are actually just natural changes. They just occurred because the fluctuation of prices happened naturally. EOS took a downturn since June 1st, and so my portfolio reflects that. That being said, I've never shared this yet, but here it is. I did sell 20% of my EOS holdings, and I sold it for Bitcoin, believe it or not. I know that's probably a surprise as well. So my Bitcoin holdings from March 2019 to August 2019, today, went from 19% Bitcoin in March to 43% Bitcoin today, August. Now again, a lot of that was grossly due to just the value of Bitcoin going up. That was just organic. And had I known that, of course, I would have put all my holdings in Bitcoin right from the beginning and wrote it up, right? But I like to be diversified, and so that's the path I chose. That was my decision. Again, you guys make your own decisions as well. But again, I did also sell 20% of my EOS for Bitcoin. So why did I sell 20% of my EOS? Well, I'm not really thrilled about the governance, and I'm not really thrilled about the slowness of action to fix it either. I'm also not thrilled about block producers being centralized and cartels forming. I do have to keep it in perspective, because like I just shared with you, Bitcoin is more centralized in terms of its hash rate distribution geographically. So that's why I only sold 20% and not 50% or something like that. Again, I strongly believe in EOS, so don't misconstrue this. I'm just balancing my portfolio with the risk reward that I perceive to be present in the market, and also taking into account the fact that Bitcoin tends to lead the bull runs. And I feel like I preemptively put all my money into the alts when I probably should be riding it up in Bitcoin for a little bit longer, because we're nowhere near the top of the bull run. I think that we have easily 20x more to go. I think that Bitcoin will surpass easily $100,000 per Bitcoin, easily, with grace and with aplomb. When the fees start inhibiting that, I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know that anyone will be able to quantify how much the high fees on Bitcoin are obstructing its failure to scale and how it's pushing off users, but I think we have a little ways to go before that becomes a problem. And so I'm just hedging my financial risk accordingly with what I see. But yeah, I'm not thrilled with the fact that inflation, while having massive approval for a reduction on EOS from 5% to 1%, didn't happen. Block producers ignored this, and they said, oh, we'll push it down the road, and we're going to get that fixed when EOSIO 1.8 comes out. Well, here it is, many months later, and those same BPs aren't even in control anymore. So I'm not even sure that this is going to happen. I'm going to, push for that to happen with my proxy. I'm just not happy with when BPs don't listen. It really ticks me off. So, if we want to decrease the inflation from 5 to 1, fricking do it. I'm venting here a little bit, guys. I guess I've had that bottled up a little bit. But man, that pissed me off when we had overwhelming support for reducing inflation. And you can argue that it's not being used, it's in a savings account. But if we vote for it to be massively reduced from 5 to 1%, it should be done like that. BPs are at the whim of voters. It's not the other way around. BPs do not get to make the decisions for the chain. And that's what they did. We had people like EOS New York, and I'll call this out, who said, you know, actually what we need to do is have a variable control knob for the system. And so we're going to wait for EOSIO 1.8 to change the inflation from 5% to 1% when we have this variable control knob. And you know what? Voters didn't ask for a variable control knob. They didn't vote for that. And that's not what we wanted. So you didn't listen. So that's one thing I'm not happy with. I think that part of the reason, just to be completely fair, for the geographic centralization in China for both Bitcoin and EOS, because remember, Bitcoin is more centralized in China on a hash rate basis geographically than EOS is for the block producers. And I think the reason for this China centralization is just that they're ahead of the curve. They get it. They get this technology. China's always been technologically fairly more advanced than other countries. That's why the United States imports so many of its electronics from China, because they are advancing technologically faster than most other countries. So of course, when something like Bitcoin comes around and EOS comes around, you know, digital internet currency, of course they're going to be first on the bandwagon. They see that, they're ahead of the curve. So China's going to be first. That's how it is. And while exchanges have pushed out good, hardworking BPs to become BPs themselves, these exchanges, which I don't appreciate, because these good BPs like EOS New York, EOS Authority, you know, EOS 42, EOS Sphere, Canada, I could go on and on, right? Quality BPs are getting pushed out by the exchanges who just use their token holders' funds to vote themselves in, then multiply it times 30, which should have been removed like months ago, and that's another thing I'm not happy with. Remove the freaking 30 votes per token. Like, come on guys, let's get some change happening here. I'm falling asleep, as I said in my tweet, I'm falling asleep on these changes. However, these exchanges that are turned into BPs on EOS are behaving benevolently. They are operating in the best interests in the short term for the EOS blockchain. And that's because they're incentivized to do so, because they're receiving pay. And the reason that they're pushing themselves in the top positions is because they want that pay. So of course they want to keep the value of EOS high. So they're going to do things in the best interest of the network, at least on the short term. So as far as that goes, there's nothing really to worry about. They are maintaining the blockchain. Transactions continue to be fast. It continues to be a powerful smart contract platform. Because they do have a vested interest financially, if nothing else, if not morally, if not ethically, financially, these Chinese block producers do have an incentive to secure the chain and to continue doing a good job. Now, I don't know that they have a long-term best interest in the chain, because if they did, they'd probably stop these cartels, stop the manipulation, stop voting with user funds. So it's a mixed opinion on their stance. But all things said and accounted for, the blockchain's performing fine. I feel bad for the BPs that got pushed out. That's how my portfolio has changed. Those are the reasons why my portfolio has changed. Now, again, I am very bullish on EOS. I know it may sound like I'm not, but I am, because it's powerful. There's nothing like it. If you haven't used it, I really beg you to do so. And as far as I'm aware, there are no perfect blockchains. Bitcoin's far from perfect, far from perfect. Ethereum, far from perfect. It can't scale. EOS, far from perfect. It has governance issues. Every one of these major blockchains has some issues. Proof of work blockchains burn electricity. Proof of stake blockchains have manipulable plutocracies. That was a mouthful. Manipulable plutocracies. So there you go, guys. Right now, I have allocated more of my funds to Bitcoin, just 20%, because I anticipate that what's going to happen, like we saw this run up from $3,000 Bitcoin to $14,000 Bitcoin, it was led by Bitcoin. And now we've had a pullback, as I predicted in some of my previous videos, because the rise was too steep, right? We had too steep of a recent rise. And so for the past month or two, it's been correcting, as it should be, because it was too steep. The market likes to shake out weak hands, and that's what it's doing damn well. And what I'm going to anticipate is happening upcoming is we're getting near the end of the shakeout. We're getting near the end of the correction and the pullback. You can see there's sort of a convergence of the Bitcoin chart. And I do feel that we're strongly going to resume a bullish trend, this time even more steeply. And it's going to continue again for another year and a half before we peak out, give or take. So why have my eggs in all these altcoin baskets when I feel that Bitcoin's going to lead the charge? And if I feel that Bitcoin's going to lead the charge, then I can just sell some of my Bitcoin when it's near the top and purchase even more of those altcoins. So with that 20% EOS that I sold, I actually intend on buying back into more EOS when Bitcoin skyrockets high, because I think that Bitcoin's going to go first. And so I'm just trying to play the markets. That's what I'm doing. I do not recommend you follow me, so not financial advice once again. I want to leave you with this because I shared a couple of quotes recently on just why we're doing this. It's good to step back and just look at why are we into the crypto space. And I've been watching some videos on, again, the Federal Reserve, the manipulation, the abuses, the cartel that they have. If you think that a cartel on EOS is bad, look at the Federal fucking Reserve. Pardon my English. But my God, it just refreshed. I'll put the video in the description below, the link that I watched, but man, I highly recommend it. It just rejuvenated me on why I'm doing this. Sure, I want to make a quick buck. Like every one of us wants to make a quick buck. We'd be lying if we're not in this for the money. But I'm even more so in this for the right thing for mankind and freeing people and enabling them to escape this horrible system that we have bestowed upon us. Starting hundreds of years ago, as you'll see in this video, this monopoly on money and the enrichment of the 1% at the enslavement of the 99%. It's really horrific. And you have these things like the Great Depression, which is a byproduct of mismanagement of fiat and money and dollars. And it's just disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting to see. And to me, crypto brings the power back to us. We become empowered with the dollar, and we control the dollar. The miners and the block producers uphold the network. And that's why it's so much greater, because no longer is some private institution raping the population of planet Earth. We are taking it back. And this is a peaceful, passive resistance that is only growing. And if you haven't got it by now, the movement is unstoppable. It's an unstoppable force because it's decentralized. And I'm so happy to be a part of this movement. So I'm going to read you a couple of quotes that just back up my strong fervor on this subject. James Madison said, "History records that the money changers, Federal Reserve, have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance." And we have Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who said, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." They think they're above the law, guys. And Thomas Jefferson said, "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Already they have raised up a moneyed aristocracy that has set the government at defiance. The issuing power of money should be taken away from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Enter Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. The people control the money." And Senator Barry Goldwater said, "Most Americans have no real understanding of the operation of the international money lenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve System have never been audited. It operates outside the control of Congress and manipulates the credit of the United States." Abraham Lincoln said, "The money powers prey upon the nation in times of peace and conspire against it in times of adversity. It is more despotic than a monarchy, more insolent than an autocracy, and more selfish than bureaucracy. It denounces as public enemies all who question its methods or throw light upon its crimes. I have two great enemies, the Southern Army in front of me and the bankers in the rear. Of the two, the one at my rear is my greatest foe." Abraham Lincoln. Thank you very much, guys.
Jamie on a beat, boy. Put the game in a frantic. Got the team feeling manic. Haters about to panic. Gotta get it panoramic. Panoramic. Put the game in a frantic. Got the team feeling manic. Haters about to panic. Gotta get it panoramic. Panoramic. Put the game in a frantic. Got the team
Colin Talks Crypto.
Haters about to panic. Gotta get it panoramic. Panoramic.
Got the game in a chokehold. EOS is so cold. FUD fighting fake news. This shit is whack-a-mole. They hate you when they fear you. I got a clear view. Opposition bags kinda heavy with that mildew. Throw Throw them tokens all to Rex, that's what I'm saying. Passive income, regulating all that hating. To them it's the west side, to me it's the blockchain. Throw on the gold chain, ain't no Fed notes, man. Disrupt the whole system, EOS got that vision. Speed of confirmations, ain't got no competition.
I've never seen anything as fast as EOS before.
Scalable, distributed trust, decentralization, all these features is a must. Got that panoramic, got that panoramic. EOS got that panoramic vision.
Put the